Are we going?
Yeah, welcome to another episode of the Rain Race Podcast. Today, we're going to be going over Indianapolis 500 qualifying. We did an episode a couple days ago recapping practice and previewing qualifying. And in this one, we're going to be recapping qualifying and previewing the race. Don't have quite as many people here this time as in the last episode, but I do have Kyle Cuthbertson, as always.
It's lit.
All right. I was hoping you wouldn't do that, but
What's
that's
up, guys?
it's an inside joke. Go check out my Twitter if you wanna. If you read my pinned tweet on at Chris Aurelio with a capital I for the L, which is confusing. But if you can find it and you can find my pinned tweet, it'll make sense. Anyways, so we actually have quite a few people watching already here, and it just dropped to 2. That's all right.
You're welcome.
A little bit late here because I just got off of work. Try to make it a little bit interesting for myself because I said the episode would start at 9, and technically speaking, as a manager for like closing shifts, I made it an ultimatum, I guess, to get out of there on time, and we didn't. So here I am, 15 minutes late, but still have all the content to review, so that's perfectly fine. Also, this episode is not going to be quite as long as the last one because we don't have as much to talk about, but still, if you have any questions, feel free to comment them, and we will try to get to them. Already in the chat, Alberto Sanchez, good to hear from you again, good sir. Great to have you here. I appreciate it. All right, so first thing I'm going to pull up here is the overall qualifying results. Quite a lot to talk about here. With Marco Andretti securing his first ever Indianapolis 500 pole position. First Andretti to score a pole since his grandfather, Mario. That was kind of unexpected, I'd say. For me personally, I think that once we saw the Andretti cars going out on track, they were really fast on Fast Friday. We thought, all right, well, I predicted there's going to be some Andretti car on pole. I predicted Rossi in particular. And then you saw the Andretti cars go out. You saw Hunter-Reay, Hinchcliffe, Rossi, all kind of, I have the results right here. Hunter-Reay was 5th, Hinchcliffe was 6th, Rossi was 9th. So, we're kind of like, oh, okay, maybe Marco's not going to really have this one in the bag. And I thought it was going to go to Dixon all the way until Marco actually hit the line. Kyle, I know you weren't actually watching live, but in Andretti...
Yeah, I was.
Oh, you were? Okay. So, background information, Kyle was at Newcastle helping out a couple of his friends at a karting event. But I didn't know you were actually watching live. But certainly, as I said, unexpected to see Marco on pole, at least given what happened to his teammates in the same session.
Yeah, that's honestly what I thought. Initially going in, I thought the speeds were going to be a bit higher, and I thought because the air temp was at like 5 degrees lower than the day before on Sunday, but the wind was actually up because on Saturday apparently there was like no wind, but on Sunday there was a huge crosswind in 1 and 2 and a headwind down the back straight. It was crazy. We were seeing speeds of like 240 on the front straight, and then going down the back straight it was like 233. So speeds were a little bit lower than I thought they were, and I think honestly that shook things up a lot on Sunday. And I thought going just without any runs being made, I thought Marco was probably the best bet because we see it all the time in Indy qualifying. When your teammate goes out, the next team car is the one to make adjustments in the line, and they're usually faster. So with Rahal and Sato, they had the same case, but it's kind of hard to make adjustments based on a run when you're the next guy up. And when you have 4 or 5 cars going out, that 5th car has had 4 runs before him to make adjustments on the car in the lines. I'm curious if they did make any adjustments on the line. I remember hearing that Dixon was the most trimmed out, and I've heard Marco say that he went up to Dixon's car and looked at Dixon like a crazy person, which with how little wing there was in the car. I know you said something about Pelot having the least amount.
Had the stream go offline for a second. I just want to make sure everything's back up and
You
rolling.
always do this while I'm talking.
No, that was not on me.
Looked
The
at Dixon like a crazy person
stream
just
completely
with how little
disconnected there.
wind there was in the
Don't know what
car.
it
I
was.
know you
All
said
my
something about
computer
Pelot
just completely lost it.
having the.
But I'm gonna hope we're back. Anyway, so yeah, you were talking about how I mentioned Alex Pelot. I thought he had the most trimmed out car. The reason I said that, and I don't have any like statistics to back this up, but I'm going based off the fact that if you look at his car in a straightaway, it looked to me like he had the best car in a straight line. He was hitting 240 miles per hour going into turn one. It seemed easier than anybody else was. And back this up. The big problem with him is that in the corners, that's where he was losing all of his time. So, you know, the commentators were really excited when they saw, oh, he's doing 240 into turn one. And then right when he got into especially turns 2 and 4, you're like, ooh, there's a big fall off in speed there. And that's what ended up costing him a lot of time. That's why he ended up finishing 7th in the Fast 9 session. But yeah, for Dixon, if Dixon actually did have the most trimmed out car, I would say it looked very comfortable. I mean, it wasn't anything too dramatic. And this is another point to bring up with qualifying, is that this is the first qualifying weekend in I don't know how many years that we didn't have any crashing, really, unless you want to count Dixon in that 6th practice session after qualifying. But from Fast Friday all the way through the qualifying session, there were really no crashes, which I found really interesting.
Yeah, this has been the cleanest month or week of practice, I should say, that we've seen in a long time. We saw Fernando's little thing happen, and then yesterday we saw Dixon's spin, which really he got back out on the track like an hour after maybe. Because just some minor damages, and that was a weird spin, by the way. Might I add that was really weird. Just he lost it so late in the corner. But yeah, it was so weird. We also saw one thing we did see Fernando spin in pit lane. Did you catch that?
I did catch that, yes. I mean, it was
interesting.
very minor. Just, I want to say rookie mistake. Obviously, it's not his rookie, or it's not his first outing in an IndyCar, but nothing really too dramatic. He didn't end up hitting anything, and hopefully that's a lesson learned for him in the race. But yeah, you bring up Dixon. I don't know how that wasn't a bigger impact. I mean, the way he lost the car that late into the turn, any other driver, you think they're going to lose the car in a turn like that, and he was going well over 200. I'd say possibly, I think they were saying, the number I want to say was 218, but I'm not positive on that. I could be wrong when he lost the car. So yeah, for him to not hit that outside wall harder than he did, he just barely brushed it. And that could have realistically been easily an incident that totaled the car. So, and that would have been disastrous for him, mind you. I mean, to have the car that he had in qualifying, and he's been quick all week. We saw what happened with Alonso, where Alonso had that big impact out of turn 4. I still haven't seen Alonso with the same pace that he had earlier in the week since then. I don't know if it's just really a comfort thing or if the car just isn't as strong, but I think that some drivers might be looking at what happened to Alonso and say, eesh, we don't want that happening to our car, especially if it's one of these drivers that was in the Fast 9.
Yeah, I wonder what Marco's reaction was when he heard that Dixon was involved in a crash after qualifying. I want to know what his reaction was, because right now it just overall cars that just have pace. I mean, we just think about it. Marco has been undefeated from Fast Friday, Saturday on the board, won the pole on Sunday, and then he came back Sunday after qualifying and put it at the top of the board. And he did that with only 27 laps of practice on Sunday. It just seems like, I mean, and then Dixon, the same way. Those are the two guys to me all week that have just been at the top of the charts no matter what. And Dixon, to me, I haven't really paid much attention to Marco's car, but I do know Dixon's been, I don't want to say whether that car is good or bad or in the middle, but his hands look awfully busy in it. But it's fast, and that's the key factor. But those two, man, those are the two right now.
Right. I mean, Scott Dixon has been, even after that crash in the sixth practice session, his team was able to fix the car, and then he was back out and actually ended up having the fastest time for quite a while until Elio Castroneves and then Marco overtook him. But he still finished the session third with a speed of 223.686, which in race conditions still pretty far up there. I mean, that's round the top of where we would have seen for the rest of the race boost practice sessions the rest of the week, I guess. Marco Andretti 27 laps in practice 6. I was a little bit concerned about that, honestly, for a while. I haven't heard anything that really went wrong, and I don't, for all I know, nothing could have gone wrong. It could have just been that they were comfortable, or I don't know. But to me, 27 laps for Marco Andretti just seemed like a very small number, especially when Dixon, even after crashing the car, had 36 laps on the day. And then drivers like Alonso, who had the most, was up at 115. It just seemed like a really low number to me for Marco to only be running 27 laps. But still, in the last 10 or so minutes, was able to put it at the top of the sheets at 224.122. I don't know. I mean, Marco has been... I said this on my Twitter. Marco has, in the 6 practice sessions that he's taken part of, or I guess 6 on-track sessions, including qualifying, that he's taken part of in the last week, he's been at the top in 4 of them. And then the other 2, he was second and third. And then there were 2 practice sessions that he just didn't take part in altogether. It's just, he mentioned it on the Marshall Pruitt podcast that he doesn't see how they're going to make the car better than they have it right now. They've been experimenting all week with ways to try to make the car just a little bit faster, a little bit more comfortable, and then they just end up having to revert back to what they previously had because they end up going slower with any change they make. I mean, talk about a car that's just that stable and that comfortable and that quick right out of the gate.
Yeah, I mean, we make this Graham Rahal joke about you have to be fast off the trailer, and that was one thing I heard Marco mention was we were fast out of the trailer. First thing he said was we were fast out of the trailer in this speed, and it's such a crazy thing, that's probably what had to do with only running 27 laps because they tried something right after qualifying, didn't work. And then the engineer, who is, by the way, his engineer this year is Garrett Mothersted, who previously worked on Zach Veach's car a few years ago. Talented guy, said, let's just go back to what we had. And then guess what? Goes P1 on the charts. I remember you saying something, because I missed that later practice. You were like, oh boy, Marco's back in 30th right after qualifying, of course. And they put what they had on it, and it goes right back to P1.
Well, that's part of what was concerning me, is because if you looked at last season, 2019 at Indianapolis, he was doing pretty all right. I mean, certainly not as great as he's doing this year, but he was certainly doing decent for the first week through qualifying, put it in 10th after qualifying, and then it seems like right after that is when the team started running into some problems, especially on carb day. It's when the problems became apparent. So I was like, oh no, is this a repeat of that where it's just out of nowhere they can't find a good race car? Maybe they spent the whole week practicing or trying to set up a great qualifying car, and then the race car is terrible. But so that's what I was nervous about. But it seems like that's not the case this year, at least yet. I mean, fingers crossed still. We'll have to see what the timesheets look like after carb day, because I think carb day is probably going to be the most representative session of overall race pace, just because I expect track conditions are going to be similar then to what they'll be on race day. It's going to be the last chance that any of these drivers get to practice with a race setup. We'll have to see. I mean, there's still a little bit of time this week for the teams to work on the cars. But another thing I wanted to talk about is Penske. I had predicted in the last episode that I kind of just threw in at the end casually. I wasn't too confident about it, but I did throw in that Penske might not make the Fast 9 with any of their cars. And lo and behold, that's what happened. In fact, their fastest driver in qualifying ended up being Joseph Newgarden down in 13th. And then you have to look even further down the order for other drivers. Will Power 22nd, Simon Pagenaud 25th, Elio 28th. I mean, it's kind of just been a disastrous year for them so far, at least. I know they've mentioned that they have good race cars, but certainly interesting to have them starting that far back, because I said it's been a staple to see them on the pretty much the front row for the past few years, it seems.
Yeah, I think one thing to talk about the Penske's, you also have to talk about Chevrolet, because you look at the sheet and 28th to 33rd is Chevy's, 21st to 26th is Chevy's. The only Honda, kind of stamped in there is James Davison. I mean, you just one car in the Fast Nine was a Chevy with Rinus VeeKay, which shout out to him. That was incredible. I did not expect that speed at all. Um, Fastest Penske is 13th. I mean, that is just, it's eye-opening. And even in years like 2017 and 18, when the Chevys were dominant, they just weren't as dominant as the Hondas are right now. I mean, it's just, I've not seen, and especially um, since Chevy came in 2012, I've never seen this type of dominance from Honda. This is really eye-opening and really crazy to watch.
I have to ask you, I don't know if you have any ideas on what may be the core cause of that. I know some people have brought up just the heat of August. It seems like the Honda engines usually run better in the heat. I don't know if you think that that has any impact on their performance this year or not.
I haven't heard that one yet. Um, I mean, I don't know, because what I've known in the past is Honda always had better fuel mileage, and for a short while they had better torque, like in 2018, which is why Honda won a lot of the street races and the road courses. But then you go to the ovals, and Chevrolet was dominant. We always knew that. I said always twice. That Chevy was just good on the ovals. They had good, just straightaway speed. So they were. But I haven't heard anything about them being slower in the heat. Uh, I want to say that wouldn't. I mean, it's a 2 year difference, but if they were the winners and the dominant force of the hottest 500 in recent memory, I would say that that would probably not be the factor. But the difference
Right.
in the conditions from August to May definitely brings up a good point, because the speed from Honda, I mean, because you're just trying to think of things that it could be, because it's just to have because this Honda speed really just comes out of nowhere. And with the whole pandemic, you really don't expect, because they weren't allowed to have a lot of people at the shop, to work on these things and to develop. So it's like you really don't, it's hard to understand and hard to, try and think about how the speed kind of came about. And there's been nothing throughout the season before Indy that has, pointed at Honda, being as dominant they are. I mean, there's just, yeah, it's definitely trying to figure, like, come up with something to figure out why this is happening.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that it's because of heat. I've seen that argument before, but I mean, we've seen 2018 was in similar conditions, and for all intents and purposes, minus the aero screen and a couple minor changes, it's the same car. So I don't think that heat over. I mean, it's not a drastic difference. We have to remember, it's not like you're comparing like 40 degrees Fahrenheit to 90. I mean, this is probably a difference of, I mean, 75 degrees, maybe to 85 degrees. It's just a 10-degree swing, if I had to guess on average. Which, yes, everything counts and everything's sort of amplified when it comes to the setups for these race cars, but it's not an absolute major difference. And what is a major difference is the dominance that we've seen from Honda this year, like you mentioned. Just a quick question here from Joe Donahue. Hello, Joe. Who's going to be Rookie of the Year? And he gave a few options: Pato O'Ward, Oliver Askew, Rinus VeeKay, Dalton Kellett, or Alex Palou. I guess I'll give my prediction first. I'm going to say Rinus VeeKay. I think it's pretty easy for me. I mean, he has good I don't know. I'd actually have to take a look at his race pace, but he was certainly quick in qualifying. I think he's matured a lot already from Texas. The commentators had mentioned it, how, uh, if you compare what he's been doing this month compared to Texas, where he sort of got called out by his own team owner, Ed Carpenter, just about being too ambitious too early on. I think that, he's determined this for this race more than ever. So I could certainly see him getting Rookie of the Year. If it's anybody else, I'd say Alex Palou. I think if they can sort of perfect what they had with the qualifying setup, they're just gonna have to put a little bit more downforce on it, make it a little bit more comfortable in the race. But he was 10th in the 6th practice session, so certainly not a slow car. So yeah, personally, I'd have to say it's going to be between VK or Alex Palou. What about you?
I mean, I'm thinking I like. I like VK and Pelot. I think they're both going to run good races. I mean, I want to say Oliver Askew, but I'm just not sure about the McLaren's pace. But if there's any driver out of that group that I kind of trust to run a clean 500 miles that actually has experience in, I believe, winning a Freedom 100, Oliver Askew. I think I have to say Oliver. If you're going to go with a dark horse, I would say Pato because, last weekend I would have told you Pato. Um, I would have told you that Pato is just not fast at the Speedway, and he kind of surprised me by qualifying 15th ahead of Oliver. This is a guy that didn't make the show last year, hasn't shown really much speed all week. Then he out qualifies Askew, and you know what? He's for a Chevy car. He's the second fastest Chevy. I mean, the
Mm-hmm.
only thing that kind of draws me back from Pato on Askew is like when you go to a Road America, Pato, his aggressive driving style, he's just on it all the time. He is aggressive. He's going to push hard every lap, but I don't think that's really going to suit him for the 500, which is why I don't think he's been that fast on the speedways. But I mean, I love Pelot and VK. I like that oval experience and Askew. Um, Kellett has that oval experience, but I think the speed from the McLarens over 500 miles, I like Askew. I feel safe with picking him.
Another question. Alberto asked if the difference in performance between the Honda and Chevys could be because of the aero screen on the cars for this year. I don't think so because they're both running the same thing. Um, and I haven't really seen a Chevy power deficit at other tracks like Texas. It's hard to know. They didn't win Texas. They won Iowa. They didn't win Road America. Huh.
They did win Road America.
Oh, I'm sorry, because it was Rosenquist one day. Who was it the other?
But it,
I'm drawing a blank.
Dixon. But it was pretty even. If anything,
What do you
this
mean they did
season
win Road America?
they Dixon and Rosenquist.
You're saying Chevy won Road America?
Oh, I thought you were talking about Honda. I was like,
No, no,
what?
no. No, I'm trying to think of races that I'm trying to think if Chevy
They won.
overall
They
has.
won one of the races at Iowa.
Yes, okay, with Newgarden. I'm trying to think if Chevy overall has had a power deficit this whole season.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, I haven't.
If anything, like the whole field, it's been a deficit against Ganassi.
Right.
That's about it.
Yeah, it's really unexpected. I don't think the aero screen plays a role in it because, like I said, everybody's running it, so it's not like it's a significant advantage for one manufacturer over the other. I don't know. I'd like to hear some input from some of these Chevy drivers. You're probably not going to hear anything too technical from them because obviously if there is an issue with the Chevy engines not putting out a ton of power, they're not going to want to say it. But it's definitely interesting. Definitely something we're going to have to keep our eyes on for later in the week with Fast Friday and the race.
The aero screen is the only thing I can think of that has changed from last year to this year that could be a cause of a difference in horsepower. Because again, like I said earlier, you have to remember that, going into the season, because earlier this year we haven't seen a deficit. We didn't see one at Texas, and Texas is
No.
the only thing that I could think of that would be any type of relevancy to how they would run in here. So, I mean, during the whole pandemic, it's not like Chevy and Honda had everyone back at the shops, continuing development. So, a turnover from last year to this year, I really don't. It's just like I said, it's shocking, it's eye-opening. It's just really, I mean, it's cool to see because Honda has been out of it for the last 2 years, really. I mean, honestly, but like to try and figure out what's happening, it's just trying to figure out any reason of why.
Yeah, Joe said he doesn't see any deficit in power for the Chevys statistically speaking, and I guess he's just talking about results for this year that they've had among the Hondas.
Yeah,
Um,
statistically, no, not at
yeah,
all.
I want to talk about Alex Palou a little bit more because if you look at his performance at Indianapolis this month, and I've been saying this over the past few days now, that I think Alex Palou, for being a rookie in IndyCar, is probably one of the most mature rookies I've seen. He hasn't made a ton of mistakes yet. Granted, yes, we're still early in the season, and we haven't even hit race day for the 500 yet. But I mean, he's been very mature. He's been very quick this month, and starting in the top 9 for the race. And you have to remember, he's never raced at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway oval before. You look at, I mean, any other rookies really that are coming in, the majority of them came through the road to Indy, where Oliver Askew, Renus VK, Dalton Kellett. I mean, any of these guys you're talking about that came through the road to Indy ladder, they had already raced on super speedways like this. This is Pato Award's, or not, sorry, not Pato Awards. This is Alex Palou's second race on a super speedway, and I think that he's really impressing, given the lack of experience that he has compared to some of these guys he's racing with.
Yeah, I Alex Palou's a guy so far this year that I've just been wrong about. I didn't think he was gonna be that good at the beginning of the season, and after, I mean, it was really after Road America, he was really eye-opening with a podium and a seventh place. I mean, really, those performances at Road America, I mean, it kind of reminded me of, like a Colton Herta type run. I mean, he just showed the maturity and then the pace. It's just been something that kind of caught me off guard. I didn't think he was going to be that. I mean, I said at the beginning of the season that, I thought he was going to be terrible. But I mean, I'm kind of happy he's proven me wrong. It's been really fun to watch.
Jumping back to qualifying here, I was talking about some surprises with Penske earlier on in Chevrolet's pace overall. You mentioned Zach Veach as well had said there was an issue with his car during their qualifying run on Saturday. That's why he ultimately ended up 17th, which compared to the rest of his Andretti teammates, who were, unless you don't want to count, or unless you want to count Colton Herta, which, I mean, Colton Herta, yes, for intents and purposes, is an Andretti car. Actually, and Jack
No,
Harvey.
he is an Andretti car
Yes,
this
yes,
year.
yes. And Jack Harvey, if you want to include Jack Harvey. But I mean, compared to the overall Andretti teammates, Veach 17th, the next Andretti car up would be Herta in 10th, and even Herta seemed like he was a little bit down on the rest of his Andretti teammates on Saturday. So, would you be able to briefly explain what Veach was saying was wrong with his car, if you actually know?
I just remember him saying something. He put something on Twitter like, "Hey, there's actually nice to find out that we actually found something wrong with the car." He didn't really get too technical. He's like, "Hey, good to know there's something wrong with the car." So that's why we were a bit off today. And he said that this is one of the best cars he's had at the Speedway. Which honestly, being honest, it doesn't really. I mean, the cars he's had at the 500 have not been that fast.
Mm-hmm.
And he's had some rough years of the Speedway, so that's not saying much fast car he's had. But the speed Andretti's shown, if they found a problem that were limiting them, I wouldn't be surprised I wouldn't be shocked to see Mr. Veach getting a top 10 because honestly, I thought this on Saturday is, what does it feel like? Like, just being completely honest, it had to have been, kind of hard to be Zach Veach this weekend and be, I go out there and qualify 17th. Even Colton not making the Fast Nine when your teammates on Saturday were 1 through 4. I mean, that no matter what, always supportive of your teammates, but that feeling had to have sucked. That had to have been rough.
Yeah, it's still crazy to me though when you think about, you mentioned how poorly, uh, not even poorly, but just how rough it must have been for drivers like Colton Herta to qualify 10th. I mean, he's still 3 positions ahead of the top Penske, which, I mean, I keep bringing this up, but it's just kind of mind blowing to me where their pace went this year. We'll have to see for the race if they can recover some of it, because I've been hearing all week, oh, Simon Pagenaud thinks he has the best race car. So we'll see. We'll see how it ends up for the race. I mean, even in race practice conditions, you can't get an absolute surefire representation of what it's going to be like on race day, because at the end of the day, what it comes down to in practice is one lap time. And in the race, obviously, that's not the case. So, if Penske thinks that they have something that's going to be very consistent over a run, maybe not the fastest, but consistent and comfortable, where it's not wearing down the tires a ton, which is ironic because that's typically what the Penske's do, is they actually do wear down the tires more than other teams. But I don't know. Maybe they know something that we don't.
Maybe Chevy is focusing on fuel mileage. Maybe they're taking the Honda approach, and it's kind of shifted around on us here.
They could be, but I don't know. I feel like they. Would you say that they still have a deficit to Honda when it comes to fuel mileage this year?
I haven't noticed a huge difference. You usually don't realize those things. You usually don't hear about those things until after Indianapolis of who's better on fuel mileage.
Right.
Like, it wasn't until like halfway through. Usually it's halfway through the year where you hear, people start bringing up, oh, the Hondas are better on fuel mileage, and like in 2018 when they for sure had more torque, you didn't realize it until after Detroit,
I don't.
because they usually try to keep things under wraps until after the big show.
I don't see something that's like what their main priority would be though, is fuel mileage, because I
I
feel
don't think
like
it's their
that's
main priority, but
no. I mean,
if you look at what Honda's done, where they've had, you know, they could just go longer on fuel, but they weren't the fastest outright car, you know.
right. But that hasn't really bode well for Honda that well in the past 2 years at Indianapolis. I don't know. I mean, there's still a lot of questions to answer here. This is just all speculation, because at the end of the day, it seems like nobody really knows the answers to some of these questions. We're just going to have to wait until we can see more on-track activity. But there's not much left, really. We have Carb Day, and we have the race, and that's it. So if you're struggling to find pace right now, you effectively have one session, and it's the shortest practice session of the month to figure it out, which, if I was one of these teams that's been struggling to find any pace, there's nobody really I can name, because it's sort of been mixed throughout the week. I guess McLaren a little bit would need to find some pace back. I don't know. McLaren kind of rebounded, because I had said McLaren wasn't doing great. It seemed like none of them were really doing great after the whole Alonso incident, but that was on Thursday, I believe. Was it Thursday or was it Wednesday?
It was Thursday.
Thursday, okay. So, maybe McLaren just didn't have a great qualifying car, and I don't think that's going to matter too much, even though I don't expect this is going to be a very frequent passing Indy 500 just because of the track conditions. I still don't think qualifying matters as much to some of these guys. That's why I'm still skeptical about Andretti Autosport, even, because you see how dominant they've been in practice sessions, even in race practice sessions, but it's all going to mean nothing if they can't really string together pace over a run. So this is where you see some of these like average of 30 laps that NBC will tell you. We'll have to see. That's what I
Yeah,
keep
but
saying
even
in this
those
episode.
graphics, it's like how many people have actually gone out there and run consecutively 30
Well,
laps
yeah,
though?
that's the thing. I mean, I don't know. The trend of this episode, I guess, is we'll have to see. Um,
Our
because
5 day out, was it 5 day? I don't even know. But our week out what am I saying? But our forecast for the race this weekend on Monday is 84 and thunderstorm. 84 and thunderstorm.
thunderstorm, is that like? Do you know if that's just morning or?
No, I just looked at my phone, looked at the weather channel just to look. It's the only day that's a thunderstorm, like the next week. It's 84 and thunderstorm.
Huh. Um, I don't know. I'll take a quick look at that. But I mean, I guess we can jump into some race predictions right now. I already sort of gave one away by saying, all right, well, this doesn't look like a ton of rain. It looks like
It's probably not going to rain.
saying like some, and again, this is Indiana, especially in the summer. It's, as you've told me year on end, it's just, you don't know until it's the day of, because they were saying we were going to
Yeah.
have a rained out 500 like last year, I think. Or was it 2018? One of those two, they said we were
But
going to have.
do you remember the forecast last week for practice week? I had rain Monday to like Sunday,
Yeah.
literally. It
Yeah. I mean,
forecast,
it's.
and we haven't had a drop of rain. It's been beautiful.
Hmm. So yeah, I guess my race predictions. I don't think Andretti as a team, Andretti Autosport, I don't think are going to be as dominant in the race as they've been throughout the session so far. Um, once you get into race conditions, I would expect that we're going to see some teams sort of mixing in with them. Dixon's obviously going to be a hard challenger. Um, I mean, Dixon is an easy pick to win for me. I think, you know, he's shown quiet but quick pace all week. I mean, he hasn't been the headline all week, but he's certainly been there this entire week. And I do think that Penske is going to pull something out in the race. I think, there's no way we've made it this far in the month without them being really anywhere. Elio was second in practice 6, so we know that they have race pace at least over one lap, and I'm sure that they're even closer when you take it over a run, because if they don't have genuine pace right now, then I'm sure that team is doing everything they possibly can to try to figure out how they're going to make a car that's comfortable over a run, and more comfortable probably than anybody else, because that's really what they're going to have to focus on if they want a shot at winning.
Yeah, like you said, I think Penske's gonna pull something out. But I mean, you said earlier that qualifying, really doesn't matter. But I mean, in this IR18 last 2 years, the winners come from the front row, and I think it's going to be a hard year to pass once again. So I think Dixon is the easy pick. I mean, Marco's a good pick just because of how dominant that car has been. But Marco over 500 miles,
I'm
it's
always skeptical of it. I don't want to pick it. I'm scared. But obviously, if you know me well, you know that's my favorite. Um, favorite
like
in terms of
this
like favorite driver.
this Fast Nine is so exciting to me. This is going to be interesting to watch because pretty like most of these guys are guys that you don't see qualifying up the front, like Graham Rahal, always 15th on back, usually in like the row 7, row 8 kind of place. Always has to fight his way to the front, and he usually gets there. By the time we're at lap 100, he's usually 5th, 6th, 7th, and now he's starting 8th. He has from 8th to get up there, and he didn't show much speed in qualifying, and honestly, he hasn't put anything up in race practice. But Takuma Sato has. So the Rahal team obviously has something, and Takuma Sato is another person who I think is just that. Okay, so just make this clear. The front row is basically three of like that right there. Those are your picks. If you're gonna put money on
Mm-hmm.
anyone, that front row right there. Marco has had the best car. Scott Dixon is the easy pick, and Takuma Sato. You cannot discredit how freaking good that guy is in 500-mile races. And again, just like Graham, is a guy who qualifies mid-pack, and he's always there at the end. He was there in the end. He qualified. I don't even know where he qualified in 17 when he won. 18 obviously had that crash, but last year, remember, he was third, and he was making moves, and he was the only guy making moves. He was making outside passes in turn 3. It was impressive, and now he's starting third. And
Yeah.
guys like Alexander Rossi, perfect example. Last 2 years, he has set the world on fire during the race. The highlights of his passes in the race, his passes in the last 2 years are like the only highlights they show from the races. It has just been phenomenal, and he's starting ninth. Like think about like just right there, all the Sato, Graham, Rossi, 3 guys that just are so good in the races and have like done so many impressive things, and they're starting in the Fast Nine. It's just it's an open. It's just I'm glad I don't bet
Well,
because it would be so tricky this year.
I was definitely going to bring up Sato because Sato, like you mentioned, is typically not the best in qualifying, and then in the race, if there's anybody who you're going to put money on to just make passes that nobody else would, it's going to be Sato and Rossi, like you had said. So especially if there are track conditions where it's difficult to pass, I mean, those are the 2 guys you have to look out for, I think, because they're the ones who just don't seem to really even put it through their mind twice. They just sort of put the foot to the floor and do it. Yeah, you have to look at those 2. It's tricky because I want to say on Marco, I feel like if anything, I just don't know how good his car is going to be like in a pack, in the back of the pack, because he's been fast all week, but it's sort of just been like I feel like Marco's a car that can lead, but then if he gets past, that's when he's in trouble. I don't know. I mean, he did, in practice 6, he was still quickest in the back of the pack because I was actually following him on the driver tracker during that lap, and he was in the back of a large pack, but I just don't see him as a driver that's going to have the confidence like Rossi or Sato to pull off a pass if need be, especially at the late stages of the race.
I mean, here's another reason it's so hard. Just think about this. The last 2 500s, the guys who have led the most laps are Will Power, Ed Carpenter, and Simon Pagenaud. Those 3 guys right there. I would love a number of how many laps they have led combined in the last 2 years. Those guys are starting 25th, 22nd, and 16th. It's so unlike what we've seen in this car the last 2 years. It's just, you just, it's hard to predict anything.
Well, here's another thing as well. Let's say hypothetically one of those 3 makes it to the front, whether it be on strategy or just, something lucky happens. They make an early pit stop and then a yellow comes out and they jump to the front. Pagenaud last year, the reason he won the race is because he could hold off Rossi. He just had the power advantage. But I don't see any of those 3 cars this year being able to do something of that caliber. Again, because let's say the roles were reversed last year and Rossi was the car that had the slight horsepower advantage. He would have won, I think. There's no doubt in my mind that Rossi probably would have won. I mean, he was pulling off, well, I want to say he was pulling off more daring passes than Pagenaud, but then Pagenaud pulled off that pass in turn 3. So, I don't see, back to my original point though, I don't see any of those 3 cars, Carpenter or Pagenaud or Will Power, if they make their way to the front of the field, I don't see them being sort of able to run away like they have. Especially Will Power was able to run away in 2018 on that last restart. He was gone. I don't see any of them being able to do something of that nature again if they are able to find themselves at the front. Another question here from Alberta. Do you think the race will have a lot of cautions this year? That's just an absolute wild prediction because, following trends of this week, I want to say no, because it's been a very clean week. But then again, that makes me want to think that we haven't seen anything and they're just waiting for the race. I don't know. If I had to guess, I'm gonna say it's not going to be as much as like 2017 for sure. That's going to be my prediction because 2017 the cars had more downforce, and that's where you have guys that were really making daring passes, and daring passes, they go wrong, big crash. I don't see as many drivers this year trying to pull off passes like that that would really result in a incident like we saw in 17 with that huge pile up towards the end of the race, last quarter of the race, something like that. I don't know. I could be wrong, but that's the way I see the race fanning out. I think it's going to be more in the style of 2018. I wouldn't even be surprised, honestly, if we see like a record green flag run, which actually I'm trying to think the year with the longest green flag run is in recent years. Was it 2013? I think it was 2013. Which is interesting because 2013 was actually a year with a very frequent amount of passes. Another question from Gam Wolfers. Knowing what the purse is, it'll be very few wrecks, very conservative racing. That's a good point as well. The purse for the Indy 500 this year is half what it usually is. So, I mean, I don't think that's really going to affect the drivers. At the end of the day, they care about the Borg Warner Trophy and their face being on it. So I don't think it's going to affect, how aggressive they are. But
the teams might say, "Hey, we're not getting a lot of money out of this, so keep the car clean." But the driver is going for putting his face on that damn trophy.
Yeah.
So that is not. Even if you lose a ride, even if like you go wreck the car and you lose a ride, you're still fighting to put your face on that trophy, and that's what they're all thinking about. They don't care. I mean, and if they do care, then they're in this for the wrong reasons.
But I do agree with the second point that, and again, this is just a prediction. I could be completely wrong, but I do think he's right that there will be few wrecks and very conservative racing. If it follows any of the trends that we've seen this month, I'd expect that sort of thing.
Yeah,
I don't know.
during the race, one thing during practice, I think we've seen few wrecks because I don't think a lot of guys are pushing as hard because, obviously, because of the what's happened. There's not. I think very few drivers have backup cars. I think during qualifying they didn't even draw for T cars, which is usually something they do. So I think they've been playing very conservative. And when you go into the race on Sunday, I mean, we do have a lot of inexperience in the field. Yeah, I mean, it's just depends on how the cars race and how they want to play. So definitely gonna be interesting. We have these off and on years, no matter if they pass, if they don't. We have these off and on years on if a bunch of yellows will fall or if they won't. But after lap 100, I do think we'll get a few. Because I think a lot of these guys, one thing, there's a lot of inexperience in this field, but there's a lot of guys who I think are really hungry. So especially, like I said, with this Fast 9, I mean, how many we have? 3, 4, 500 winners in the Fast 9, 4. And the rest of them, have been in this a while, like Hinchcliffe and Marco and Ray Hall. Those guys have been in this for a while. And, they want one. What is this? Graham's been doing this since 08. Marco since 06. Hasn't had one. You know what Hinchcliffe has been through. I mean, just a lot of guys starting up the front with really good cars who are really, really desperate for a 500 win. They've been at this for a while.
Hinchcliffe, too, I think, just wants a full-time ride.
Oh, yeah.
Exposure to that.
Oh, what a week he's had
win
to get that, though.
Yeah.
Think about that. What a week he's had to get that.
I'm going to round off the episode here with this. I'm going to put you on the spot, and I'm going to have you go first. One driver, if you're picking one driver, and feel free, if you're watching this, to comment as well, who you think is going to win. But Kyle, I need to know.
Let's say Graham Ray Hall.
Okay, this is going to be boring. This is going to be boring because I'm going to just go on a limb and say Marco because I don't care.
Yeah,
Dixon's the easy pick, but I want to see Marco for sure. And I think that he's going to be Marco. I think is probably the most hungry driver in the field. You just mentioned that some of these drivers like Graham, and Graham has had a couple of races in recent years that didn't go his way, just some bad luck. But I think Marco, more than anybody, is going to be wanting a win here. Alex Palou, I'm seeing. That would be very interesting. I certainly don't think he's out of a shot. Pagenaud. All right, well, that'll be interesting. Pagenaud actually has a little bit of a bonus on his head if he wins. I think it's just like a Menards like a Menards deal. But I did read about that. Newgarden. So a couple of Penske drivers. Yeah, that'll be interesting to see. Who knows? I've already mentioned what I think Penske's going to have to do if they want to be in contention for a win, because it's not going to come on pace, I don't think, unless they completely clown on all of us and really just roll out with race cars that are quicker than everybody else over a run. I just don't see it happening. But anyway, that's going to wrap it up.
They just bring the beast back and just lap the field 5 times.
Yeah, well, maybe. I wouldn't mind. You know what? If they want to bring it back, I wouldn't even care.
Roger owns it now. He's like, yeah, this is legal now. We're showing up on race day. We're going to lap the field 5 times.
I wouldn't even mind, man, just for that engine back for one race. But I'm going to wrap it up for this episode. Unfortunately, that's going to also wrap it up for podcast this week, because Kyle is heading out to Indianapolis. I'm not. I was supposed to be going, but, you know what happened. So hopefully next year. But Kyle will be going there. He's going to be checking out the Road to Indy races at Lucas Oil Raceway and the sort of unexpected return of the Hoosier 100 at the Indiana State Fairgrounds. So if you want to check that out, I'm sure you're already subscribed to him, but go subscribe if you're not, because he's going to have content on that. And I didn't even need to ask, because I'm positive he's going to have content on that. As for me, though, you can subscribe if you're new, and I'm probably going to be releasing some more stuff in the future. Maybe we'll do a race review. I'm not sure. I mean, I already know David Land's going to be doing his own race review, and it's probably going to follow along the same lines of what I'd say anyways. So I don't think it's going to happen, but it could. So subscribe to the channel, though, if you want to see that. Other than that, I do have some more sports car racing stuff planned for the future. I'll give a sneak peek, including NASCAR at Le Mans, which is a thing that happened once. That's interesting. So if you're interested in that stuff, subscribe to my channel. Anyway, that's going to round it up for this episode. Check us out on Twitter at Rainers Podcast and any of your favorite podcasting platforms. Take care. See you in the next one.